200 men had tried. 200 men had failed. The average survival time was 4.7 seconds. Not to win. Not to score a point. Just to survive 10 seconds. The prize was $80,000 in cash, sitting in a briefcase at the edge of the stage, untouched. When the announcer asked if anyone else wanted to try, the room was silent. Then a voice from row 14 said, "I'll try." The man who stood up weighed 138 pounds. Grand Olympic Auditorium, Los Angeles. November 11, 1967. 800 people packed into the arena. The air thick with cigarette smoke and the specific anticipatory tension of a room that had already watched several large men be destroyed and was waiting to see if anyone would be brave enough or foolish enough to try again. A red banner hung above the stage. The Mountain Challenge. Below it, 200 challengers. 200 defeated. Average survival time, 4.7 seconds. And beneath that, one question: are you brave enough? In row 14, a small man sat quietly reading that banner. He didn't react. Didn't smile. Didn't scoff. He simply read the number again. 4.7 seconds. Viktor Kranov, they called him the Mountain, stood 6'3" and weighed nearly 500 pounds. Not soft, not slow. A former Soviet Greco-Roman wrestler who had defected to America and found something more profitable than sport. His body looked like it had been constructed rather than grown. Shoulders wider than doorframes. Hands like iron traps. A neck that disappeared into solid muscle. The rules were brutally simple. Step into the ring, survive 10 seconds, walk away with $80,000. One rule. One prize. No one had ever claimed it. Karate champions, judo masters, professional wrestlers, Marines, Green Berets. Every single one crushed. The longest survival time was 8.3 seconds, a judo black belt from Osaka who was lifted off the stage and slammed so hard the wood cracked beneath him. 3 days before this night, Dan Inosanto had called Bruce. "There's a giant. 500 pounds. Nobody lasts 10 seconds." Bruce didn't respond immediately. Dan knew that silence well. It meant Bruce's mind had already started working. "What's his technique?" Bruce asked. "That's the thing," Dan said. "He doesn't really have one. He just grabs you. And once he does, it's over." Bruce paused. "How does he close the distance?" That was the question no one else had asked. "He rushes forward," Dan explained. "Both arms wide like a bear. He wraps you up and that's it." For seconds of silence on the line. Dan counted them. Then Bruce spoke. "A bear hug requires both arms. That means for a brief moment, his center line is completely open." Dan felt a chill. "How long?" "About 1.5 seconds. 1.5 seconds. For most people, nothing. A blink. A breath. But for Bruce Lee, it was everything. In 1.5 seconds, he could strike 6 times, precise, controlled, devastating. "You're going to challenge him," Dan said. "Get me 2 tickets." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit center stage. The announcer's voice filled the arena, theatrical, commanding. Karate champions. Judo masters. Professional wrestlers. Marines. Green Berets. A pause. Every single one has failed. He let that land. The longest survival time, 8.3 seconds. The audience leaned forward. The rules are simple. Survive 10 seconds. Win $80,000. A man stepped forward and opened a briefcase. Stacks of crisp $100 bills gleamed under the spotlight. The crowd stared at that money with the specific yearning of people who could calculate exactly what it would change in their lives. Please welcome the man who has made that money untouchable. The stage shook before Victor appeared. Not metaphorically. Each step sent a dull physical percussion through the boards. Then he emerged and the crowd gasped. He was not just big. He was something that defied comfortable categorization. A mass of muscle and density that seemed to exist outside normal human proportions. He never spoke. He didn't need to. His ritual was always the same. He picked up a wooden chair, held it in one hand, and squeezed. The chair didn't snap, it collapsed. Wood crumpling, metal twisting, the entire structure folded into a mangled ball of debris in 3 seconds. He dropped it. Thud. No applause. No cheers. Just silence. Because everyone in that room understood what they had just seen and what it meant for the human beings who would stand across from him. In row 14, Bruce Lee watched calmly. No fear. No hesitation. Calculation. He didn't see a monster. He saw a problem. And problems had solutions. 3 men stepped forward before anyone else dared. The first was a Marine. 230 pounds. Broad shoulders, cold eyes, trained to walk into danger. He lasted 3.1 seconds. At 2.4, his feet left the ground. By 3.1, he was tapping desperately, 3 sharp slaps against the massive forearm crushing his ribs. The sound of surrender, repeated frantically. He collapsed to the stage gasping, eyes watering. His lungs simply hadn't been able to expand. The second challenger was a wrestler from UCLA. 260 pounds. He lasted 5.2 seconds, long enough to struggle, long enough to believe for 1 second that he might escape. He didn't. The third was a karate black belt from San Diego. 195 pounds. 4.1 seconds. 3 more names added to the list. 203 challengers. 203 failures. The briefcase sat untouched. The audience had done the math by now. Size wins. Mass wins. Gravity wins. This wasn't about technique anymore. It was physics. And physics didn't negotiate. The announcer scanned the crowd. Anyone else? Silence. Last call. 10 seconds. $80,000. Not a single person moved. Then, I'll try. The voice wasn't loud. Didn't demand attention. Somehow it cut through the silence anyway. The announcer squinted into the dim rows. Who said that? I did. A man stood up in row 14. Black mandarin collar jacket. Calm posture. No visible tension. And the room reacted with the specific confusion of people encountering something that didn't fit any available category. A woman nearby whispered to her husband, "Someone should stop him. He'll get killed." Dan Inosanto grabbed Bruce's sleeve tightly. "I brought you here to watch," he whispered urgently. "Not fight. You're 138 pounds. He's 500. That's not strategy. That's bone-crushing force." His grip tightened. "This isn't philosophy. This is a hospital visit." Bruce didn't argue. Didn't explain. Didn't try to convince him. He simply buttoned his jacket. One small movement. Quiet, final. Dan froze because he had seen that gesture before. Bruce turned slightly and looked at him. 1.5 seconds, he said quietly. "That's all I need." Then he started walking. The distance from row 14 to the stage was about 40 feet. A path he covered in silence while 800 people watched with the collective thought that this was a mistake. The Marine had been 230 pounds and failed. The wrestler had been 260 and failed. The smallest challenger that night had been 195. This man was 138 pounds and he was walking toward the stage without hesitation. He reached the steps. Climbed them. 2 light movements, no sound. And then he stood under the spotlight beside Viktor Kranov. The contrast was almost incomprehensible. 500 pounds of overwhelming mass next to 138 pounds of contained precision. The scale was wrong in every visible dimension. A man in the audience shouted, "Don't do it, kid. You don't have to prove anything." Bruce didn't turn. Because he wasn't here to prove anything to them. The announcer approached with a clipboard. Name? Bruce Lee. Weight? 138. The pen stopped. The announcer looked up slowly at Victor. Then back at Bruce. "You're aware the lightest challenger before you was 172 pounds. I can count." A few nervous laughs from the crowd. Not confidence. Tension trying to find an exit. Martial arts background? Jeet Kune Do. Wing Chun. The announcer wrote something, unfamiliar with either. "Any injuries?" "No." A pause. "But you might want to prepare medical staff." "We always do, for the challenger." Bruce looked at him calmly. "I wasn't talking about me." The announcer blinked. Unsure if he had just heard a joke or a warning. Across the ring, Victor watched. Same way he watched every challenger, with indifference. Weight difference this extreme, outcome already decided. 138 or 238, it didn't matter. Grab, lift, crush, next. But something was off. Subtle. The way Bruce stood, feet not planted like someone bracing for impact, but positioned like someone preparing to move forward. No defensive posture. No guarding. Victor dismissed the thought. You didn't attack a mountain. You survived it. If you could. The bell rang. Viktor Kranov exploded forward. No hesitation, no setup, no calculation. 500 pounds of committed momentum charging straight ahead, arms wide, head down, a human avalanche moving with the certainty of 203 confirmed victories behind it. This was the moment that ended everyone. Every challenger before had done one of 3 things: frozen, retreated, or attacked head-on. Every option had failed. Bruce Lee chose something else. He moved forward. The audience gasped. Not from excitement. From the visceral wrongness of it, the way watching someone step into traffic felt wrong before reason caught up. But Bruce didn't collide with Victor. He disappeared. In less than a second, he stepped forward and slightly left. 18 inches of lateral movement. That was all. Victor's arms slammed shut on nothing. His massive body carried forward, momentum continuing past the place where Bruce had been, arms embracing empty air. For the first time in 204 attempts, Viktor Kranov missed. The audience froze. Their brains needed a moment. The architecture of what they had been watching, the invincible pattern of grab, lift, crush, done, had just produced a result it had never produced before. Nothing. Viktor turned. Confused. Eyes reading the space with the specific disorientation of someone whose most fundamental assumption had just failed. He charged again. Faster, wider, more aggressive, the adjustment of someone with 203 wins who had never needed to adjust. Bruce moved again. Same direction, same precision. But this time he made contact. 2 fingers. Lightly, on the inside of Viktor's wrist. Not pushing, not blocking. Guiding, 2 inches off trajectory, the smallest redirection. Viktor's arms wrapped around nothing again. 500 pounds hugging empty air. A ripple spread through the arena. Not cheering, something more confused, more disoriented. This wasn't survival anymore. This was something else. Viktor's breathing changed. Heavier. Faster. For the first time in this ring, he was chasing something instead of containing it. The dynamic had shifted in a way his body could feel but his mind hadn't processed yet. He charged a third time. Everything he had. No control, no calculation. Rage carrying 500 pounds of mass toward 138 pounds of stillness. And this time, Bruce didn't step away. He stepped in. Closer than anyone had ever dared. Inside the range of the grab, inside the space where Viktor's arms had no leverage, no mechanical advantage, no power. The position Viktor's technique couldn't function from. Bruce's foot planted between Viktor's stance. His body aligned. Weight centered, structure organized around a specific purpose. His hand rose. Open palm. Stopping 1 inch from Viktor's chin. 1 inch between consciousness and darkness. He held it there. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Viktor was completely still. Not because he was forced to be. Because he understood, for the first time, with complete clarity, that the hand 1 inch from his chin was not a threat. It was proof. Proof that everything he had built his identity around, the size, the weight, the force, the 203 victories, could be bypassed. That the gap he had never imagined existed had been found and occupied by a man who weighed less than a quarter of what he weighed. And that if that hand moved forward 1 inch, it would all end. The silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then the arena exploded. 800 people on their feet simultaneously. Shouting, stamping, the wooden floor shaking louder than Viktor's footsteps had shaken it. Because they had just watched something that violated the logic they had come in with. A 138-pound man had not just survived. He had made survival irrelevant. Bruce stepped back slowly. Calm, composed, untouched. No sweat visible. His jacket still buttoned where he had buttoned it in row 14. Viktor didn't move. Didn't attack again. Didn't speak. Because for the first time in his career, he had nothing left to add. Bruce gave a small bow. Turned. Walked off the stage. No celebration. No victory posture. No demand for the briefcase. Just silence and the same controlled economy of movement he had brought to everything. He walked back through the same 40 feet, but now every eye in the arena followed him with something different. Not fear. Respect. He sat down in row 14. Right where he started. Dan Inosanto's hands were still shaking. He leaned in, voice barely steady. How many seconds was that? Bruce opened the event program. Smoothed the crease. I wasn't counting. A pause. I told you I wasn't interested in surviving 10 seconds. On stage, the briefcase sat exactly where it had been. $80,000, untouched. Bruce never asked for it. Never looked at it. Because he hadn't come for the money. He had come for the 1.5 seconds that no one else had thought to look for, the brief window in the architecture of an apparently unstoppable technique where the technique's own commitment became its vulnerability. The window that 200 men had never found because they had been too busy planning how to survive to ask how the thing worked. Viktor Kranov won 203 times because no one asked how he closed the distance. They asked how to withstand what happened after. Bruce asked a different question. And a different question produced a different answer. November 11, 1967. Grand Olympic Auditorium. 203 men failed. One man held a palm 1 inch from the mountain's chin and waited. The mountain didn't fall. It simply realized it had already lost.